how sex can save you from your porn addiction. Have you ever wondered if it's okay to have casual sexual relationships with women during your recovery from porn or masturbation addiction? If you have, then this video is for you. Today, I'm going to answer a question I get a lot from guys regarding their sexual lives during recovery. Now, I write and I create a lot of videos about overcoming porn use and dating, and I also coach a lot of guys on this. I think it's only fair that you should know more about my dating life, my sexual history, and my dark past with porn. After all, I took it upon myself to address yours. For those of you that email me to ask me what sex is like during recovery and what my experiences with it were, I'm going to share some of that with you today. And I'm just going to be a little vulnerable with it and just say what needs to be said. Popular opinion is that trying to have sex while struggling with a porn addiction can lead to sex addiction or can make your porn addiction even worse. This is not true. I overcame my addiction to online pornography and chronic masturbation 10 years ago. So that's November 2007 actually. I should also mention that during the time I was addicted to pornography, I simultaneously worked on improving my sexual life. In that process, I learned a lot of lessons. Now you name it, I've done it. And I'm yet to have any man email me who acted out in a manner that I was not familiar with. Now thinking about some of the things I did when I was hooked on porn really makes me wonder when I think back to those things. I'm just like, damn JK, like who was that person? Like was that really you? Since recovering from my porn addiction, I've had a much healthier, active sexual life. During my recovery, I dedicated 2 years to working on my anxiety issues with women, both with approaching and talking to women and having sexual relationships with women who I found to be attractive. Now, I didn't just pick this up from anywhere. I actually was studying a book by Albert Ellis, who is known as the founder of rational behavioral therapy or rational behavior therapy, and he was a psychologist, I think back in the 50s or the 60s, I can't remember. He had an issue with anxiety, and to overcome it, he went out to a park and he spent the entire summer talking to women. That was what he was afraid of. And eventually he overcame it after talking to 100 women. So that was what inspired me to do that. Now granted, this is a little bit of an extreme approach, but it worked for him. And that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about today because it led to an improvement in my sexual life. And if you're not a sex addict but addicted to pornography and you're not morally or religiously opposed to casual sex, I can say with absolute certainty that this approach will absolutely bring your deepest issues to the surface. So you may be struggling with things like social anxiety, it's going to bring that to the surface, depression, low self-esteem, poor social skills. Maybe you're needy, sexually you might be needy, or when you try to meet women you might be emotionally needy as well. You may have insecurities about the lifestyle, the way you live, or your hobbies, little things like that. Your past failures and regrets, failures with women, are going to come to the surface. You might have body image issues, you might have insecurities about your career or your finances, maybe you don't feel you make enough or you feel you make too much. You might have self-worth issues. Your issues about the length of your penis are going to come out. Your relationship issues that you've been repressing with your parents will come out when you take this approach. Unresolved past relationships, different conflicts you had with women. If you're a very religious person and you choose to take this path and you haven't resolved the conflict that you have with your religion, that's going to come out as a big deal. Current or past, if you have substance abuse right now or some sort of chemical dependence, that's going to come up. Bad time management. If you have negative views about women, all these things are going to come out. So if you choose to take that path, be prepared for all of these things to surface. It's going to be hard, which is why most men who try to do this end up quitting when they start and they try to take a more traditional, slower paced recovery path, and there's nothing wrong with that. In my case, I met women in all sorts of situations, in the daytime, in bars, and a majority of the women that I met, I pushed myself to meet them directly, so not online, and this was before dating apps were popular. Now prior to that, I had had sex with 3 women, and in all of these situations, the women actually chose me. I didn't do anything. They aggressively chased me, they wanted me. So I lost my virginity in college at the age of 21, and I'm 33 years old now. It didn't make me a sex addict. In fact, I became aware of the depth of my porn addiction. And if I had not gone through that 2-year experience, it was 2 years long, of putting myself out there, I would probably have never taken the recovery process as seriously as I did. In the process of having multiple sexual relationships, I came face to face with my darkest and most feared demons. Now, social anxiety, very low feelings of self-worth, narcissism, and unresolved pain from my past relationship was some of these things. And this exposure therapy brought all these issues out, and I couldn't run away from them, okay? I saw why I had such a great relationship with pornography, right? I'm being sarcastic if you don't get it, if you missed that part. I also destroyed a few limiting beliefs that I had about women and sex. I wanted to get over this part of my life, and some of you want that as well. I wanted to determine if this, having sex with multiple partners and hooking up was all it was cracked up to be. So I immersed myself into that lifestyle the hard way, which involved learning how to authentically connect with women, and that required me, of course, to put myself in front of women consistently. So that also involved getting rejected over and over again. And since I was in the recovery process, I was lucky enough to have access to some very wonderful tools, and I processed a lot of the emotions and issues that came up using what is called rational therapy by Albert Ellis, who I mentioned earlier. And what rational therapy does is that it helps you resolve emotional and behavioral issues, things like self-defeating thoughts. And it was a very painful journey at first, guys. And I'm thankful that I was in recovery during this time and that I was exposed to different sorts of therapies, because instead of jumping into the deep end, I was able to, just like going out there and talking to women, I was able to gradually, step by step, expose myself to increasingly challenging situations. Now, at that time, I struggled with porn-induced erectile dysfunction. I didn't know what it was at the time. I had really warped views of women and sex. My social anxiety was really bad, and I really lived in absolute fear of talking to attractive women. So each of these things had to be handled at different stages of the process of my putting myself out there. Now, in the process, many of my misconceptions about women were completely demolished. One of the biggest things that I learned was that women are very sexual, and that a woman has to be available for sex, or else you're not going to have sex with her. Now, having consensual sex with a woman, once you've worked on making yourself like the most attractive man that you can be, that really depends on her. And even if she is available for sex, there may be some things which will still disqualify you. Like your looks might disqualify you, your race, what her friends think of you. There are a lot of factors which are out of your control, and it's neither fair or unfair, it's just how it is. So for me, this was a very healthy realization, and it actually freed me from a lot of the wrong concepts that I had just assumed. A lot of them also came from porn. So you cannot control whether a woman has sex with you or not. It's her choice. But you can control your attitude, you can control your personality, you can control how you look, and you can also control the sheer number of women that you engage with authentically, and your mindset, specifically how you view yourself, because that's going to affect your response to any sort of rejection from a woman. And trust me, there will be bucketfuls of that. I also learned about the impact porn had on women through this experience. And I won't go too deep into that, that'll be for another video, but I learned about the unique emotional impact of our sexualized cultures on different women. I also learned that many times, even for a man who's addicted to porn, so if you have a porn addiction and you keep finding that you have problems in relationships or in casual or serious relationships, sometimes the problem is not yours. A lot of time it's the woman's. Most men just don't know that and don't know when to leave. Over this 2-year period, the longest time that it ever took me to go from meeting a woman to having sex was something like almost 2 months, and I ended up in a relationship with her. The shortest amount of time was less than 10 minutes, and yes, we used protection, and no, she wasn't an escort or a sex worker. So I'm only sharing this to demonstrate how far I came from having absolutely no control over my sexual life, like watching porn, masturbating on an almost daily basis, to overcoming my social and sexual anxiety. And towards the end of those 2 years, what was happening in the other parts of my life was that my career was actually taking off. So at the end of those 2 years, the timing was right. I met a great woman, and I just threw myself into my career for the next few years. Had a steady relationship, and that's an entirely different recovery story. Relationships and recovery, that's for another video. But the reason I'm sharing all of this with you is very simple. If you are addicted to pornography, if you have issues with compulsively viewing porn or masturbating, it's absolutely possible to completely quit and have what I would call a decent sex life. The truth is, all moral considerations aside, you are living at a time in history where it has never been easier to have consensual sex. Unless, of course, you live in a non-Western, highly conservative country. We can blame many things for this ease of having sex, but we can also look at the reality of the situation. If you are not in a committed relationship and you have a desire to have sex with multiple partners, but you choose porn instead, I'm telling you that putting yourself out there to meet and have sex with women could accelerate your recovery in the sense that it brings your deepest issues to the surface, to your awareness in a very quick way, so you can start dealing with them. And in some cases, you can deal with most of them right there in that process. Now, while I've had many successful clients who have, recovered from their porn addiction and they've created fulfilling sexual lives, there's still some men who should not do this, okay? And there are just two simple reasons for this. The first reason is that if you have a very deep-rooted trauma, like a huge trauma, and you are aware of it, you're better, let's say you suspect it, okay? You're better suited to working with a qualified therapist first. This process is not an excuse to avoid dealing with a situation, which should be handled medically. If it's a serious issue, you should handle it medically. Secondly, you can only overcome these psychological issues, especially those related to women and sex, with a structured plan. So without a plan that gradually helps you work on this, and a plan that can also help you process your issues as they come up, you're really not going to make it. It's going to be very challenging. Now, you're not going to hear many therapists say this or offer a solution for this, because although some therapists have recovered from sex addiction themselves, none have put themselves through a structured method of meeting women, developing authentic relationships with them, having healthy sex with these women, and then repeating this process dozens and dozens of times until it just becomes a part of them. It's a part of their nature. And then eventually moving on to a monogamous relationship. What you will hear is that it is impossible for a long-term monogamous relationship to compete with the dopamine-inducing effects, the novelty of having sex with a new person. That's it. There's going to be like, monogamous relationships cannot compete with something like that. So just don't do it at all, because you're never going to be able to get over it. Now, that has a small element of truth to it, but it doesn't take into account the individuals, the men who have had their fill of sexual experiences on purpose. Now, there are many men too, non-religious men, who have had a lot of casual sex, and they got married, and they stayed committed for the rest of their lives. Now, apart from myself, I am yet to meet a non-religious counselor or coach or mentor who was not a sex addict, who had an active, healthy sexual life that involved multiple women. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But this is something to consider, or you might want to consider, if you're seeking professional help for your porn addiction. And this is an important message, because not every man that recovers from porn addiction and gets married is ready for that either. Most of the time, that goal is kind of set for them. They're either conditioned by society or they're conditioned by their counselor, and they're like, this is the only way. And they end up in relationships they're not happy in, but they just play along because they feel that, monogamy is the way to go. This is what I'm supposed to do. And it's not for every guy. And I'm talking about a small minority. Now, I'm not one of these guys out here to bullshit you or pretend to be secular or science-based. When deep down I might really have some moral issues with sex and I secretly want you to take the path that worked for me. No, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a guy who's been recovered from pornography addiction for 10 years. And I've had sex with enough women early in my recovery to come to the conclusions that I'm sharing with you in this video. Now, pornography is not sex addiction, okay? Now, while there's a risk and some men are susceptible to moving from porn addiction to sex addiction or replacing one with the other, both are two different issues, okay? And most men who worry about becoming sex addicts are usually worrying needlessly. In fact, so many men are, what's more important is so many men are more caught up in avoiding and rationalizing why they cannot approach women that they are attracted to. So they use this porn addict versus sex addict argument as an excuse. And I also have to acknowledge the partners of porn addicts out there, whether they are girlfriends or casual partners or wives, who may not agree with this. I get that. Now, you can pick the pieces of your shattered pride, of your broken self-esteem, of your lack of self-belief. You can put together a stronger, more resilient, and actual larger-than-life persona with unbreakable self-belief and unbelievable courage. Now, this isn't some, you can become the greatest woman slayer ever motivational speak, nor am I encouraging you to actively take that lifestyle if it's not your thing. There's nothing wrong if you choose not to do that. Now, you may watch this and go like, you know what, hold up. Is this guy saying that he fucked his way to freedom from porn? No, I'm not, okay? This is about your masculinity. It's about your dreams, your desires as a man that have been stunted by porn. It's about looking at that in an honest way. Now, I used to be scared of talking to women. I used to come home from the bar, from the college gym, from parties, and I used to just beat myself up for not approaching any women and just masturbate for hours. I did not deny that that was what I wanted. I didn't. And when I made some money, it was spent on campsites. I was really down in the dumps. The things I was doing, I fell so low that I had to look up to see the bottom. So again, it is possible. So forget all the people who say, you know what, if you were addicted to porn, it's a slippery slope to sex addiction, or they might say, you know what, having sex with more women is just making the problem worse. Many of these people saying this have either not been through the recovery process of porn and masturbation addiction, from porn and masturbation addiction, and this is either their opinion or they were individuals who had a co-occurring sex addiction. And that is black and white thinking in action. Porn addiction, or even just a bad porn habit, is not a life sentence, okay? It's just that no one has ever told you otherwise. I'll give you an example. See, when I was a kid, I wet my bed for way longer than I should have. It was pretty bad. There was a lot of shame involved, especially when my mom would take the mattress outside to dry in the sun. And if it was a weekend and all the neighborhood kids were home, they would all know that JK had peed in his sleep again. It was pretty bad. And I thought it would never end because it went on for years. I just kept wetting my bed. And eventually, I learned how to, wake up and go to the bathroom instead. Now, it's something I literally just remembered for this video. There's no shame anymore, While it's nothing like a porn addiction, the intense shame was real. But that intense shame that I associated with it for years, it's gone. Now it's something funny to me. And it's that simple. It's simple, but of course it's not easy. For those of you who are courageous enough to take this path, I can guide you through this. I can show you how I went from being a grown-ass man who was absolutely scared of talking to a woman in the mall, watching pornography, masturbating to medicate and cover up my anxiety, feel better about my frustration, to having healthy sexual experiences with multiple women. Now, as of my life right now, I don't watch porn, I don't masturbate, I have a healthy sexual life, but I never take my recovery for granted. Till today, I maintained the habits that kept me off porn in the first place. And they have actually become a wonderful part of my lifestyle, which is focused on self-improvement, continuous self-improvement and growth. That's what I'm about. I know how absolutely hard it is to quit. And despite my 2 years of, going all out and meeting lots of women, my real sex life, I believe, started when I gave up pornography and started having sex on a consistent basis with one person. There is still so much more to learn and much more to sex than the physical aspect. And when you get into a monogamous relationship, that's when you're able to tap into that, especially a long-term relationship over time. When I say time, I mean years. So just because you struggle with porn, it doesn't mean your dating life is dead. Achieving a remarkable dating life by your own standards, it's not an easy undertaking, okay? And it's even more challenging when you're hooked on pornography. So there are steps that you can take to actually get to the root of your beliefs about sex and women, all the way to building a predictable and controllable sexual lifestyle while addressing your very real struggle with pornography. These are topics that I'm happy to assist you with. You can get on a free 20-minute one-on-one call with me using the link in the description below. And if we accept you, you'll get a link to my calendar to schedule your call. In the meantime, take advantage of my free video course. It's called 20 Ways to Quit Porn. I dropped a link for it in the description below. And please, if you found this helpful, do me a favor and share this video with 3 guys who would appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe. I release videos twice a week. We also have a lot of videos on relapse prevention. If you have a partner who's struggling with a porn addiction, or if you're in a relationship with somebody who is a sex addict, we also have video playlists addressing that, and we offer coaching for that as well. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'm JK, your brother in this struggle, and I'll talk to you soon.